going strong. It's just incredible. Colorado, California, Nebraska, it's really just a long list of states nationwide that are trying to fight fracking. Such an important issue. It's a local issue, it's a state issue, it's a national issue, it's a global issue. But a big issue that you also have to hone in on. You've got to stay engaged in this local level, but also if we allow the exporting of liquefied natural gas, we are going to virtually be unable to stop fracking anywhere. If we allow the building of these liquefied natural gas export facilities, we are going to find that trying to stop fracking is a lot more harder than it is today. In addition to fracking and the waste and these export facilities, we really have to also get engaged in the infrastructure needed for the fracking industry. And that deals with compressor stations and pipelines. So I'm sure everybody here also has, knows the news about all the pipeline problems. The Keystone XL pipeline, I can go into more detail on that if people have questions afterward. We have the southern leg of the Keystone XL pipeline that's already being built. So much attention's gone to that permit that TransCanada wants to be able to bring that pipeline in from Canada to the US. But we're building the southern leg right now. President Obama approved the southern leg. So that's an issue. We know it just happened in Arkansas. Pipeline spills are not uncommon. If you go to ecowatch.com, you can click on energy and we have a whole page just on pipelines, several pages. You go to our pipeline page. There's a pipeline they want to build from Cleveland to Ontario. There's a Tennessee pipeline that people are fighting. There's the Enbridge pipeline people are fighting. There's pipelines right in New York City that are being fought. If we're going to frack our planet, we're going to need pipelines to get that natural gas where we want it. Then we need compressor stations, which cause a whole nother slew of problems. But if we allow exporting, if we allow our country to become the place that we're going to ravage to power the rest of the world, we're going to see significantly different landscape than we see today. And I have a feeling most people in this room aren't so happy with the landscape we're seeing right now. So it's a problem, continued use of fossil fuels. I'm not going to go deep into offshore oil drilling, but offshore oil drilling creates a whole nother slew. The BP oil spill enough to kind of rein us in on those issues. So fossil fuels is a problem. But it's not our only problem. Another really big problem we have is money in politics. So, so what has made money in politics go from really bad to worse to actually horrific was the 2010 Supreme Court case Citizens United. So Citizens, in that case, 5 U.S. Supreme Courts decided, so 5 Supreme Court decided that it's unconstitutional to limit the amount of money that corporations can donate, can give to elections.
Because they're people too.
Because they're people too. So it gives corporations the same First Amendment rights as live people. Real live people, all of us here today. And this means that corporations can spend as much as they want. And corporations said that if you limit the amount of money that we can give to elections, then that's a violation of our First Amendment right, free speech. Okay. So in 2010, things really changed. There's all these watershed moments. I remember the day NAFTA passed, and I was like really upset. Citizens United is just a huge watershed moment. The impact that that has had is so significant. I think that it was very clear in this last election the impact that that had. And so I think we have to really understand what is a corporation, right? So a corporation, by law, has to make profit. By law, they have to, a publicly traded corporation has to do everything they can for the value of the shareholder. They, every single day, are putting profit above human health and the environment. But that's how they're structured. That's reality. But should we have then corporations who are solely focused, their main mission is profit, should we have them controlling our politicians? Should they be allowed to buy them, literally buy our politicians? If I asked any of you, if I came up to you and said, hey, next week I'm moving, and for the next 5 days, can I like own you virtually and help me move and bring your big van and move everything in? Well, at the end of 5 days, I feel I owe you at least a really big dinner, right? Well, what's happening, these corporations literally are helping these politicians get elected. They get elected and now that politician is bought. They owe that corporation. So what has that done? So since corporations are driven solely by the motive to make a profit, and then they're controlling our policies and our politicians, the people who are supposed to be taking care of us, right? We live in a democracy. So what has this done? This has truly put our democracy in crisis. Corporations have more say in the policies, in the bills, the legislation going through our local, state, and federal governments than the people. It's a democracy in crisis. We have to take our democracy back. I have one friend who's been an environmental advocate for decades. Talked to her about 10 years now, and I said, how's it going? What issues are you working on? She goes, campaign finance reform. I'm not doing environmental work anymore. I'm sick of banging my head up against the wall. If we don't change money in politics, we're never going to win. We have to take our democracy back. So vitally important. So Citizens United is bad enough, right? But what it's done is it's fueled these front groups, right? So ALEC, Heartland Institute, the Koch brothers. It's truly fueled these front groups that are giving millions and millions and billions of dollars to campaigns, and they are putting into our state, local, federal governments people who are going to write legislation and policies that favor them. So fossil fuels are a huge problem. Citizens United, money in politics, those are some really huge issues that we need to face. Somehow we have to get over that. And so what impact has all that had? It's had a huge impact on our policies. I'm a huge fan of individual action, and I'm going to talk about that closer to the end of my talk. Individual action is vital, right? We have to live sustainably. So we need to do things in our everyday life to do that. But policy just plays an enormous role in the future of the health of our planet. So if our politicians are owned by corporations and corporations only care about profit, how are we going to get there? So we need a federal energy policy. And I'm not going to stand up here and tell you all politicians are bad. They're not. There's some incredible ones, and I hear a rumor that our Ohio, that Bob Hagan is running for Senate, for U.S. Senate. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's some amazing, incredible, politicians out there, and we need to give them support. So, energy policy, huge, 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 right? We live in a country that has no federal energy policy, right? We have not, as a country, come up with a plan. A renewable electricity standard, a renewable portfolio standard, whatever you want to call it, right? We're not saying by 2025 we want 25% of our electricity to come from renewables. It's a problem. It's been a problem for a really long time. But I will say, I do believe I'm the, glass half full. I'm an optimist, otherwise I don't think I'd still be doing the work I do today. And about 2007, 2008, it was a really exciting time. We had a federal energy policy going through Congress, and we really were taking the right steps forward. I'm going to talk more specifically about Ohio in a minute, but it was just exciting. All these companies were talking about sustainability and people, planet, profits, and it really seemed like we're finally taking that big step forward that so desperately needed to happen. But then in 2009, the energy bill did not pass the Senate, and it got killed. And it was really a shocker. I thought it was going to go. Not that I loved everything in it, and you know, there's like Congressman Kucinich at the time wouldn't even vote for it because there were so many things in it he didn't favor. Cap and trade was in there. For me, it was a step forward, a vital step forward that we needed. Well, the good news is, February 2013, Senator Boxer and Sanders introduced climate policy on the federal level. So that's active right now. So when, I'm not going to tell you just, act locally, think globally. We really need to act locally, act at the state level, act at the federal level. We need to do it all right now. That's the position we're in today. So we do have some amazing federal legislators who are trying to push through a climate bill. It will have a cap and trade on it. It has a renewable energy component too. Get engaged on that. We're covering that nonstop on ecowatch.com. So that's good news. But it constantly feels like these 2 steps forward, 10 steps backward. And I'm going to use Ohio as a great example for that. So also around that time, so here's what's exciting about state government, and it also falls into local government. The federal government doesn't act, so what happens? The states act. And it's really great. So what's happened with the lack of a federal energy policy, lack of a federal renewable portfolio standard, is that the states started passing them. They actually even started passing them as early as 1983. The majority of them passed in 2000. And right now we have 29 states plus DC that have passed state-level energy bills. SB 221, Ohio's energy bill. What an exciting time when that bill passed. I know a lot of people in this room probably were involved in that. That was in 2008. I just loved it. It was so energizing to see corporations and renewable energy companies and environmental advocates all coming together, and politicians, to pass an Ohio energy bill. We weren't an early adopter, but you know what? We did it, and it's really exciting. SB 221, the bill came out saying that 25% of our electricity had to come from advanced energy sources by 2025. Of that 25%, 12.5% from renewables. 50% of that had to be generated in the state, and then there was a 0.5% solar carve-out, which really helped ignite the solar renewable energy credit market. Still is keeping it a little higher than the wind renewable energy credit market, so it was exciting. It kind of was middle of the road to the lower end of what other states are doing. California has the strongest renewable portfolio standard. Theirs is 33% by 2020. But I'll tell you, as a resident of Ohio, born, raised, Clevelander, I was excited. So that was under Governor Strickland, and we had a lot of great support. We had a really great Ohio Energy Office in the Ohio Department of Development, and we had a great local statewide incentive. So I'm going to go back to that 9 cents on your electricity bill that the last speaker spoke about. Even though all of you are engaged, I bet many of you didn't know maybe that you were charged 9 cents every bill. Companies, residents, everyone 9 cents no matter what your usage was. That money for a decade went into a fund called the Advanced Energy Fund, and it has been helping bring renewable energy projects to our state. Significant Ohio incentive that completely changed the return on investment for individuals or businesses that want to install solar and wind for their business or for their home. So it was so great. So we had, on top of that, we still have a federal incentive, which is a 30% tax credit. We used to be able to apply for a grant, and you could actually get 30% of your entire project in a check if you are a company. So between a 30% tax credit on the federal level, plus the Advanced Energy Fund, which was actually a very nice incentive, it was a no-brainer if you had the right site. Don't ever forget that wind and solar are site-specific. But if you had the right site and you had some extra money and you were ready to make that investment, it was just a great thing to do.